A sacrifice must be made. The air was thick with the stench of burning incense and fear. Ethan Hayes stood at the edge of the blackened stone pit, wrists bound, surrounded by figures in crimson robes. The chanting of the crowd was a rhythmic pulse against his ears, low, guttural, and ancient. This wasn't Earth. And he wasn't here by choice. The robed high priest raised a hand, and silence fell over the gathering. The beast awakens. A sacrifice must be made. Ethan clenched his fists. You have the wrong guy. The high priest didn't react. He turned to the crowd. Let the great WRM feast, and may our people be spared another year. A deafening roar erupted from the pit. The ground trembled beneath Ethan's feet. The air itself vibrated with the force of the sound. His heart pounded. They were going to throw him in. They were going to feed him to a dragon. Thrown into the abyss. Before Ethan could struggle, hands shoved him forward. The world tilted. He fell. Wind roared past his ears as he plummeted into the abyss, the dim light from above growing smaller and smaller. Then, impact. Pain shot through his body as he crashed onto a hard, uneven surface, rolling over jagged rock. The metallic scent of blood filled his nose. Above him, the pit's opening was a distant ring of firelight. The people were nothing more than shadows watching. A second roar. This time it came from below. Ethan turned, and the sight stole the breath from his lungs. A shape unfurled in the darkness. Massive. Ancient. Scales like molten metal. Eyes like burning embers. The dragon rose to its full height, towering over him. Its wings stretched wide, casting the cavern in deeper shadow. Then, it spoke. You are not of this world. Its voice was thunder rolling through the pit like an earthquake. Ethan swallowed hard. Yeah, no kidding. The dragon lowered its head, nostrils flaring as it inhaled. You reek of something unnatural. The beast's tail lashed against the stone, carving deep gouges in the rock. It does not matter. You are food. It lunged, and Ethan ran. Man versus monster. His legs burned as he sprinted across the cavern, dodging between crumbled ruins of past sacrifices, rusted weapons, broken bones, shattered armor. A massive claw slammed down, missing him by inches. Stone exploded outward, sending debris flying. Ethan dove, rolling beneath the dragon's outstretched wing. Think, damn it. He was human. He had no magic, no weapons. All he had was his mind. And that had to be enough. His eyes darted across the cavern, searching for anything he could use. Then he saw it. Near the far wall, buried beneath dust and rubble, lay the remains of a warrior's skeleton. And clutched in its bony grip, a sword. Not just any sword. A massive, obsidian-forged blade, its edge glowing faintly with old runes. Bingo. The dragon roared behind him, closing the distance fast. Ethan dove for the weapon, fingers wrapping around the hilt just as a shadow fell over him. The beast struck. Ethan spun, sword raised. And steel met scale. A battle begins. The impact shook Ethan's bones, the force nearly wrenching the sword from his grasp. Sparks erupted where blade met dragon hide. But something happened that neither he nor the dragon expected. The runes on the sword flared to life. And the dragon recoiled. Its eyes widened in shock. That weapon, the beast growled, voice tinged with something close to fear. Ethan didn't hesitate. He gripped the sword with both hands, adjusted his stance, and smirked. Guess I'm not your dinner after all. The dragon roared, coiling its massive body, preparing to strike. Ethan tightened his grip. And the real fight began. The blade of the fallen. The sword in Ethan's hands hummed with power. The moment the blade had made contact with the dragon's scales, something ancient had awakened within it. The runes burned with a light that wasn't fire but something deeper, something primal. The dragon took a cautious step back. Where did you find that weapon? Its voice rumbled. Ethan wiped the sweat from his brow, adjusting his stance. Found it on the ground. Some poor guy wasn't so lucky. The dragon's molten eyes narrowed. That sword belonged to the warrior Elric. He was the last man to wound me. Ethan's pulse spiked. Wound? Not kill? The dragon's claws scraped against the stone, its muscles tensing. It will not save you. It lunged. Ethan barely had time to react. He threw himself to the side, rolling just as the dragon's tail whipped toward him, a blur of muscle and scales. The ground shattered where he had been standing. Dust filled the cavern. Ethan scrambled to his feet, eyes darting. He had the sword, but a weapon alone wouldn't win this fight. He needed a plan. Man against monster. Ethan darted behind a jagged rock formation as the dragon exhaled a gout of fire, the heat scorching the air. I can't take this thing head on. He peeked out, spotting the beast's weak points. The eyes were too well guarded. The underbelly was softer but still too thick. Then he saw it. A scar across the dragon's left shoulder. The scales were thinner there, like something had punched through long ago and had never fully healed. Elric's strike. Ethan took a breath. That was his target. The dragon charged, massive wings kicking up a storm of dust. Ethan sprinted straight at it. Are you insane? The dragon bellowed. Maybe. But insanity was exactly what he needed. A reckless plan. Ethan leapt, aiming for the beast's wounded shoulder. The dragon swung its massive claw. Ethan twisted in midair, feeling the wind of death barely miss his head. For a split second he was above the dragon. He brought the sword down with everything he had. The blade struck true. The ancient wound tore open. The dragon screamed, a sound that shook the cavern walls, sending debris tumbling from above. Ethan landed hard, rolling to his feet just in time to see golden blood seeping from the wound. The beast staggered, eyes filled with something Ethan hadn't expected. Pain, rage, fear. You are no mere sacrifice. The dragon took a deep breath. And the entire cavern shook. Oh, that can't be good. A pulse of raw energy erupted from the dragon's body. The cavern walls cracked. The air hummed with power. Ethan shielded his eyes as the dragon's form began to change. Its scales darkened. Its wings grew, stretching unnaturally, splitting into jagged, bone-like structures. Its eyes, once burning like embers, became pools of black void. This wasn't just any dragon. It was something far worse. A forgotten nightmare. Ethan's grip on the sword tightened. All right, that's just cheating. The dragon's new form loomed over him, shadows twisting unnaturally around its body. You have awoken something that should have remained buried. The beast's voice was deeper, distorted. Unnatural. The runes on Ethan's sword flashed brighter, reacting to the shift in power. He had wounded it. But now it was angry. Ethan took a shaky breath. He had one advantage: he was human. And humans? They were at their most dangerous when their backs were against the wall. Ethan raised his sword, grinning despite the odds. Let's go, big guy. Round 2. The beast reborn. The cavern groaned like a wounded animal, shaking under the weight of the dragon's transformation. The creature that had once been monstrous was now something worse. Its wings, now jagged and skeletal, flexed with an unnatural ripple of movement. Its obsidian-black scales drank the light, making it seem like a living void in the cavern's dim glow. The golden blood still seeped from the wound Ethan had inflicted, but instead of weakening, it had done something else. It had changed the dragon. You have no idea what you've done, human, the beast rumbled, its voice now layered, like multiple voices speaking at once. Ethan tightened his grip on the sword, heart hammering in his chest. Yeah, well, you weren't exactly playing fair before either. The dragon let out a low, guttural growl. Then, it moved. Death on wings. Ethan barely had time to react. The dragon vanished in a blur of impossible speed. Then, agony. A whip-like tail slammed into him from behind, sending him hurtling through the cavern. He crashed against a crumbling pillar of rock, pain exploding through his ribs. He coughed, tasting blood. Faster than before. Way faster. Ethan forced himself to his feet, the cavern spinning around him. Stay moving. Don't give it a clean shot. He dashed left, just as the dragon's claw ripped through the stone where he had been standing a second ago. Dust and debris exploded outward. Ethan jumped, planting a foot against the wall and pushing off just in time to avoid another swipe. The beast was toying with him. It knew it had the upper hand. Your kind always struggles, the dragon sneered. Always fights. Even when death is inevitable. Ethan wiped the blood from his mouth. That's the thing about humans. He raised the sword, leveling it at the beast. We don't know when to quit. A dangerous gamble. The dragon reared back, taking a deep breath. Ethan knew what was coming. The fire. But this time he noticed something different. The glow in the dragon's throat wasn't orange. It was violet. The fire it unleashed wasn't normal flame. It was something else entirely. Ethan threw himself behind cover as a torrent of black-violet fire spewed from the dragon's maw. The flames ate through solid stone like acid. That's new. Ethan rolled to avoid the melting rock, heart pounding. The dragon was faster, stronger, and now had a new kind of fire. If he didn't end this fight fast, he was dead. Then he spotted something. The wound he had reopened on the dragon's shoulder. The golden blood was still seeping from it, but more importantly, the scales around it were still weak. Ethan narrowed his eyes. There. That's my shot. But he needed a way to reach it. One final move. All or nothing. A leap of faith. The dragon loomed over him, eyes burning with cold fury. Any last words, human? Ethan grinned through the pain. Yeah. He ran straight at the dragon. Catch me if you can. The beast roared and swiped, but Ethan was already in motion. He jumped, using the dragon's claw as a springboard. Then he did something completely insane. As the dragon reared its head back, preparing to unleash another breath of violet destruction, Ethan did the one thing no sane person would ever do. He launched himself directly into the dragon's mouth. Into the jaws of death. Ethan plunged straight into the dragon's gaping mouth, the world swallowed by darkness. The heat was unbearable. The smell of burning ozone and raw power choked his lungs. The beast's violet energy was coalescing, preparing to release another wave of destruction. But that was exactly what Ethan had counted on. As the dragon's throat tightened, preparing to spew its black-violet inferno, Ethan drove his sword forward, straight into the beast's soft palate. Crack. The runes on the sword erupted in golden fire. The energy backfired, the dragon's own destructive force turning against itself. Reaag. The dragon convulsed, its body locking up as the energy misfired, flooding its own system. Ethan felt himself being hurled back as the dragon screamed in agony. A massive explosion of black and gold light ripped through the cavern. And then everything went silent. The fall of a titan. Ethan hit the ground hard, the force knocking the air from his lungs. Everything was spinning. Through blurred vision he saw the dragon staggering. The wound on its shoulder, now fully torn open, was leaking golden ichor like a dying star. Its wings flickered, its once unstoppable power fading. The dragon took one last, shuddering breath. Impossible? Then with an earth-shaking crash it collapsed. Dust and debris exploded into the air. The cavern trembled as if mourning the fall of a god. Ethan just lay there, staring up at the ceiling, his whole body screaming in pain. Did I just kill a dragon? He let out a weak, half-delirious laugh. Hell yeah. A warrior's exit. It took everything Ethan had to push himself up. His ribs were definitely broken. His body felt like it had been through a meat grinder. But he was alive. And the dragon was not. As he limped toward the fallen beast, he saw something strange. The dragon's body was fading, breaking apart into golden embers that floated upward like dying stars. Only one thing remained. The sword. It lay embedded in the dragon's skull, now crackling with an unearthly glow. Ethan stepped forward, gripping the hilt with both hands. With a final pull he yanked it free. For a moment the cavern hummed. Then the dragon's remains dispersed into the void, leaving nothing behind. Nothing but the sword. And him. Well, Ethan muttered, resting the blade on his shoulder. That's gonna make one hell of a story. The legend begins. As Ethan finally staggered toward the exit, the light from the cavern's entrance grew brighter. The villagers, his former captors, stood at the edge, their faces frozen in a mix of shock, terror, and awe. None of them spoke. None of them moved. Then, one by one they dropped to their knees. Whispers spread through the crowd like wildfire. He killed the dragon? The sacrifice survived. No, he conquered. Ethan exhaled, wiping the blood from his chin. Yeah, you're welcome. He turned his back on them and kept walking. The world was a big place. And if this was just the beginning? Then humanity was about to make one hell of an entrance into legend.